Welcome to the Maxwell Leadership Executive Podcast, where our goal is to help you increase your reputation as a leader, increase your ability to influence others, and increase your ability to fully engage your team to deliver remarkable results. I am Perry Holley, a Maxwell Leadership facilitator and coach.
And I'm Chris Goede, Executive Vice President with Maxwell Leadership. Welcome and thank you for joining. Today, Perry and I are super excited about not only today's session, but we got another one for you. We're going to do a two-part series.
Yeah.
Those watching on YouTube, I just held up 3 fingers. That's how we're getting started. I didn't hold up 1 finger though, so we're off to a really good start. As we get started, I want you to know that we're going to have a special call to action today. We often send you to the maxwellleadership.com/podcast. We got a different one for you. And you're going to want to know what that is by the time we get to the end of our
Which
podcast.
means I'm going to need to know it when we get to the end. So
Which means, so Perry's going to be able to take notes. Today's topic is teaming for success. Today's part 1. We're going to move into part 2 next week. Here's why we're super excited about this. Chris Fuller, who is the owner of RightPath, is a guy that's been around our world for a long time, has helped John develop content, has facilitated for us, spoke for us, coached for us, still does to this day. And we give him the hardest projects and we give Perry the easiest ones. We weren't supposed to say that. But Chris and his team over at RightPath are a great partner of ours when it comes to leadership development, when it comes to culture and understanding not only self, but teams. And we've partnered together on a new product that we're going to be delivering to teams that we're super excited about. And so we're going to unpack that today. We're going to unpack the importance of it and what we love about it and then how you can use it. So Chris, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate all that you do for Maxwell Leadership. I do want to spend time talking about RightPath though. So talk a little bit about RightPath. I know that's kind of your baby now and your focus.
Yeah.
And give those that are either watching us on YouTube or listening to us a little bit more about RightPath.
So RightPath was founded on this incredibly accurate behavioral assessment. And it was founded out of a need. You know, most organizations are founded out of a need, this compelling purpose. And the compelling purpose was that a major struggle point of organizations is fit. Like, how do I know I have the right person in the right seat, to quote Jim Collins 25 years ago? But understanding that fit, there were some aspects of the personality or temperament assessments that just weren't landing as tight as they needed to. And so the founder really went seeking a tool that could dial in a little bit closer to that, to the specifics of getting into that. So RightPath was born out of that solution to make sure that we had that right fit for those. Fast forward, I was introduced to the tool in 2007 as we're working with it. And what came about was, great insights, greater depth than any other tool that I'd been a part of. But it started revolutionizing how I coached, how I facilitated, how I developed the teams. And so revolutionized my consulting industry or consulting aspects. And so how you're wired matters.
Yeah.
John calls it the law of the lens. And so this lens aspect was so deeply impactful that fast forward to 2019, I bought the company. And so I've really been passionate about making a huge difference, tremendous difference with leaders and teams and cultures through the products.
It's a great time to buy a company.
Yeah.
Yes, we've walked this road with Chris, and that's why we can sit here and laugh.
That's a lesson for another podcast on buying a company 9 months before the world shuts down.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
So personality and temperament and how people are wired is so important. And I've been a big fan. And Chris brought me in when I first joined Maxwell Leadership. You were the first guy I saw, and I stayed after I saw that. So I was pretty pumped about that. But many people know about DISC and Myers-Briggs. There's a number of players in this market. But because I spent time with you and the team and really learned, I just think this is such a remarkable tool. But how does it differ?
The short answer is going to be the accuracy and the depth and the stability over time. So when you look at the difference between what would be called a personality assessment, and I don't want to bore everybody with some of the psychological details, but there's a level called behavioral wiring that's different than personality or temperament. So personality and temperament are a little bit more surface about how I show up. But behavioral wiring comes into the predictability that this is going to be stable. Like this is probably part of my route. And again, not to bore too many people, but DISC is based off of Marston. So when you look at William Marston and you look at sort of the psychology of that, the 4-factor assessments on that personality. But there's a deeper level that even Jungian psychology kind of got into, which is this non-conscious behavioral wiring. And so one of the aspects, again, is just this depth of this non-conscious, what John calls the law of the lens, this lens theory, if you will, Gestalt theory. Ultimately, we get into how do we understand what moves us and where did that come from? So that level of depth, and then again, that level of accuracy and the algorithm that kind of comes in. We've never had any more greater comments and consistent comments than, man, this was more spot on than anything that I've ever taken.
It's been true, and I've done it for family members, done it for our team, we've done it for our clients, and I love that we have the 4-factor. It tells you kind of how you show up, but then it goes much deeper, and it says, well, this is after we get to know you, this is who you really are. And I thought that has been so rich in saying, yeah, you may come across this way, but this is how you really operate.
And my favorite part, when the word depth is right for me, because then it goes into the 16 sub-factors. Which is, for me, the differentiator with this tool versus others, because that right there drives, obviously, up to the top. But that ultimately is gold. When I'm struggling with something, I can get in there and look at it, figure out why I'm struggling, or, which this is going to kind of lead us into our next topic, when I have a team member, right, that's struggling, or when I'm not connecting as the leader, or I see 2 team members, struggling with each other, I can get in there and kind of help look at those sub-factors outside of the reports that you guys offer, right? We're not even going to get into that today about just being able to run a report between the 2. But the reason that we are partnering with you on this content piece is really for teams. And understanding self is one thing. We need to have that awareness. But then also the power of this tool and using it in the team dynamics is another. Talk a little bit about this from a team perspective and the power of it to be able to drive engagement and awareness and all those things that we need to have a successful team.
Teams are made up of individuals. Yeah. And so I always like to say that we're just a group. I mean, we're a group of individuals, and something has to happen for us to become a team. I don't believe that we can call ourselves a team until we have match commitment. Well, some of that match commitment comes into me being willing, that willingness to be able to say, well, what's Perry like? Like if I'm not really connecting with Perry, I mean, Perry's, like a 90% extrovert on that. And so we can tend towards introversion on some of the, but if Perry wants to talk about something, he's going to talk about it. And you're like, can you send me an email? And so,
can we make this quicker? Yeah.
And so this aspect of how do we understand and celebrate each other? We're all wired for greatness, but we're not wired for greatness in the same areas. Yeah. And so when it comes to teaming, to be able to understand the individual and collective wiring of the team, and then what does that mean on how we team? That makes all the difference in the world. Like one of the teams we were studying early on was, there was one person that had a little bit of bluntness, one person that was moderately straightforward, and 8 people that were diplomats. And so when you look at 8 people that are diplomats on the same team, we're not addressing the issues that we need to address. Right. And so it can actually just the awareness of the wiring and the components that are going to help us team make all the difference in the world around, do we judge each other or do we celebrate each other? And the difficulties aren't necessarily, it's like, I don't have a problem with Perry. My parents have a problem with Perry's essentially the genetics that funnel down to us.
That's really good.
Hey, podcast listeners. Many of you listening right now would probably love the autonomy that comes with owning your own business or becoming a coach that helps other businesses succeed. Well, we have a phenomenal strategy where you are 100% in control of your own business, earning income on your own terms, and have access to the people, tools, and resources you need to build a thriving leadership development business. When you become a Maxwell Leadership Certified team member, you join a global community of entrepreneurs led by our expert team of mentors and faculty, including John C. Maxwell. You'll also get one of the top leadership certifications in the world next to your name, giving you the boost you need to get started. Visit us online at maxwellleadership.com/join the team to find out more.
We use it. I really have enjoyed so much. I think it's a ultimate self-awareness tool. When you embrace what it comes back to you in this assessment, the 4-factor, the 6-factor, and the 16 sub-factor, it really can tell you a lot about you. We use it a lot in coaching, but I wonder about it, when you're thinking about individual use of this. Is coaching the best way to? What do you think about that? You set up for coaching. We're talking about it in teams. I think there's a play on both sides here.
Tremendous play on both sides. Like what Chris was talking about, I've got 2 team members that aren't really seeing things eye to eye. And for me, it's the ability to look at a report and say, you're seeing this from a precise factor and you're seeing this from an agile factor. Mm-hmm. And so I just want you to see that you two are coming at the same problems from 2 different sides, precision and organization, maybe, as opposed to generalist and improv. Yeah. And so that aspect of the coaching, but then I've really got to be aware as we talk about coaching around my style, right? My behavioral profile. And then yours, because you may be a little bit more, not Goede, but certainly you, a little bit more guarded on some of those things. And so although you're an extrovert, you have a little bit of that safety factor. Well, my risk factor, I peg an 80 on risk.
I recall that.
Yeah. So,
which I'm surprised he's even sitting here today at a desk for 2 sessions.
So the fact that I'm 100% risk and the fact that you are 90% more stability, if I coached you to my profile, I'm bringing you to a place that would be malpractice from a coaching standpoint.
And very uncomfortable.
And so it really is. You coach the situation, but you have to coach the player in the situation. Right. And when you know their wiring, you know that what tremendous impact that's going to take.
So it reminds me of a conversation about, hey, we can't just, let's say I'm leading a team, and we go back to the example of the 2 team dynamics that maybe there's tension. There's 2 ways to approach that. There's either I'm going to manage through that, which is go get along, go figure it out, or I'm going to coach through that. And this tool allows me to then coach both of the individuals through that, or the team, as I am then coaching the team members. So I think there's so many different uses for this, to your point, and I know that you've used it both in team workshops, but also coaching one-on-one. It's just it's a powerful tool to understand.
How have you seen the team, the reports Chris mentioned? He alluded to, there's some fantastic reports when you have your whole team take the assessment. But how have you seen that used? I know we're using it now, starting to use it more with the team report. The leader gets a report that helps them almost individually, person by person by person. How do they relate to that person? Is that the real strength in this?
It's individual and it's collective. So, from the executive team report, that team report, it will compare the leader against every individual contributor so you can see where those differences are. But then we holistically look at the team and the dynamics of the team. So what we're able to do with the data, and again, there's in people development, I'm really passionate around, number one, it's got to be people, it's got to be emotionally intelligent. You talked about self-awareness. 90%, 95% of people believe they're self-aware. Only 10 to 15% are actually self-aware. Yeah. And so that gap, that delta causes a lot of difficulty and a lot of inefficiencies in how we team. So when I plot that team, and so when I look at the team, I plotted us and I plotted the team onto a quadrant. And so Chris and I, although Chris comes in as an analyzer, he actually profiles a lot as a strategic thinker. And so you're on the networking side, and so I'm a director, and I'm like, let's go. Like, what are you two waiting for? Like, let's get it. And so I'm overdriving. He's like, well, wait a minute. Let's make sure we have a plan and a process. And you're like, well, let's just talk through this. And so ultimately, again, as a team, what can happen is if you don't understand the team dynamics, the team that I've led in the past, I'm like, don't tell me no, don't slow me down, let's go. But the team is like, well, wait a minute, what's the plan? What's the process? Can we space this out over 6 months? So the dynamics of how your team is wired, you can't lead the team you want. You can only lead the team you have
Right.
while building them into be the team you
Yeah.
want. And so it's such a key piece to just understand that I'm not up against you. I have to look at your wiring, because that's where buy-in and change and relationship keys come into really unlocking that genius and that law of connection.
And I think one of the fun things about this is that you get in a room together, and we've all been a part of these different trainings with teams, and you start throwing the numbers up on the board. We start interacting with those numbers, and all of a sudden the walls come down, right? And they're like, now I know.
Yeah.
That totally makes sense on whatever, right? And you just see the light bulbs come off. And when you leave that team, I just feel like the engagement, the dynamics of that team are at a completely different level than when you started the day, because simply getting in, having awareness, putting the walls down, it's going, yep. I mean, that's me right there, right? That's how I am wired. And then they accept you for that as well. It's a powerful time together.
I thought you were a jerk, but that's really how you really are wired.
That's exactly right.
But then, even though there's a lot more empathy goes into saying, oh, I know I really respect, or appreciate who you are, and like you're saying, you can really help round out this team, because how do you say, we're not all great at the same thing, but we're great in different things, and figuring out what your greatness is.
Exactly.
Not only self-aware, now it's others' awareness, and situationally where we're figuring out how we work best together.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I try to get people. There's so many times where we're judged. There's so many times where we are, quote unquote, even canceled, even within our own department, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
But the whole piece is, how do we celebrate the beauty of who we are and celebrate that genius instead of weaponizing that? So when I know that you're, a 62, in my terminology, 62 unprecise, meaning you're more precise than 90% of the population, now I come to you and I understand you have this high need for this level of detail. So it's not you wearing me out with details and slowing me down. It is, if I want Perry to run fast, then I'm going to need to make sure that Perry has sufficient level of detail to make sure that he can do that. So this awareness and this understanding, there's no weakness on the page when we look at your one-pager. There's no weakness. There's only beauty and genius. But now collectively, how do we make it us against it instead of me against you?
Yeah. I've had people ask me, okay, so of all the work that you've done, like what's the number one profile for leaders? Like what? And we're like, no. It's yours. Like understanding yours is the best leadership profile you can have. And to your point, being comfortable in that and resting in that. The other thing I'll say about some of the work I've seen you do with understanding the teams is, I know you have a client of yours that you've even used this as kind of a benchmarking tool, right? Where it was part of the decision to bring people onto the team. And I know one of the case studies you shared with me is just fascinating, where you would think that this role of a large team needed to be extroverts. And so along with the tool and the team matrix, we rated everybody inside the company and came back and we were like, oh, the top performers actually need to be more introverted or whatever. And then they were able to kind of build a new team off of that. So it's fascinating around being able to produce that team dynamics and that team matrix for even a part of the hiring process.
We reduced turnover by 10%.
Yeah. So
actually over 50%. So they were at 19.2% turnover. And it was a call center. And what was happening was they were hiring people just a little bit too extroverted. And so when you're on an inbound call center and you're highly extroverted, ultimately through some of these things and working on the teaming and working on the fit, we were able to take that 19.2 down to 8.9% turnover. And for a team of 300, they were losing 60 people.
Yeah, that's a big number. Well, I'm going to wrap us up. But here, I want to say this. Next session, we're going to talk about the power of this tool when it comes to what is your pace for change? What is your confrontation style, which I'm sure everybody was like, I need to know that. What's your drive? What's your relationship? But we always we talk about, hey, the hardest person to lead is yourself. The next hardest is probably your team. And what we do know is that you got to know self to lead self, and you better know your team to lead your team. And this is like giving you part of the blueprint of how they were made and the team dynamics that it creates. So here's what I want you to do as I wrap up. I want you to go to maxwellleadership.com/teaming. So for short for teaming for success. There, I want you to fill out that form. And man, we would love to connect with you and talk a little bit more about the power of not only this tool and the assessment, but then bringing Chris or Perry or myself in to facilitate this for your team and the dynamic that will shift and happen in regards to engagement, productivity, less turnover, you name it, across the board. So go to that URL, fill that form out, and we would love to help you.
Terrific, Chris. And Chris, thank you both.
Yeah.
It's a great conversation. Please join us next week when we continue the conversation. As Chris Goede mentioned, you can go to maxwellleadership.com/teaming. You can download a form there. We'd love to send you more information, contact with you, and hear from you on that. We love hearing your comments. We love knowing what you think. If you have a question or comment from us, you can also leave that there. That's all today from the Maxwell Leadership Executive Podcast.